Good evening, everybody. It feels so beautiful being here. I've been away for a while, and when you come back, you realize even more what a beautiful, sacred vessel this ashram is, providing a supportive place for all of us who live here, visit, do programs, to go deep within, discover new things, and to grow spiritually. We're very blessed, very fortunate. Gurudev was speaking about Yama and Niyama in the DVD. I've given 3 talks already on the precepts of Yama. This is the 4th talk, in which we're going to address Aparigraha, non-greed. Aparigraha refers to non-greed, non-coveting, non-hoarding. It's one of the 5 Mahavrata, great vows, that form the spiritual foundation of yoga. Not only yoga, all spiritual, all faith traditions have these principles at their foundation. So I'll begin with a little story. In the 19th century, there was a very famous Polish rabbi by name Hafez Haim. So once an American tourist traveled to Poland to visit him, to receive his blessings. So he went to the rabbi's home and was very surprised to find that the home consisted of just a simple room filled with books. The only furniture was a table and a bench. So the tourist looked at the rabbi and said, "Rabbi, where's your furniture?" And the rabbi looked at the tourist and said, "Where is yours?" And the tourist said, "Mine? Rabbi, I'm just a visitor here." And the rabbi looked at him and said, "So am I." The great Sufi mystic Rumi once said, "Inside the great mystery that is, we don't really own anything." What is this competition we feel then before we go one at a time through the same gate? There are 3 ways to move through life: competition, cooperation, or dedication. In competition, we strive to defeat other people in order to attain our desired end. In cooperation, we work together with others for a common goal. But the highest, in a way, is dedication, in which our entire focus is the benefit of others. Loving, giving, caring, sharing for the benefit of others. It says it right there. Serve all, love all. That was sort of the essence of Swami Satchidananda's life. And near Swami Shivananda's altar, it says, "Be good, do good." Swami Shivananda was once talking about the essence of religion. And he said, the essence of all religion, all faiths, can be summed up in 4 words: be good, do good. And he said, all the rest is commentary. But if you just tell someone, be good, do good, they're going to look at you and say, well, what do I do? So that's why all the teachings, all the scriptures have come into being, because complicated minds need complicated directions. Years ago, Seattle was the site for a Special Olympics competition. By Special Olympics, what I mean is the participants were physically and mentally challenged children. And at this one event, there were 9 such children who were running the 100-yard dash. Now, they had really trained for it. They were really psyched for it. They were excited to do it. So the gun was sounded, and they started running. But very soon, one of their comrades fell, stumbled, and started crying. Now, what would be the normal reaction, let's say, in a marathon competition, and you see one of your competitors fall at the outset? What would be the normal adult response? One down, one less person for me to defeat. But these children had an incredible reaction. When they heard the cries, every single one stopped in their tracks, turned around, and went back to see the child that fell. They bent down, kissed him, comforted him, and then helped him up. And if that weren't enough, I don't know how they got the idea, but they linked arms and walked the course together. And when they crossed the finish line, the whole stadium went wild in a standing ovation, because they knew they had witnessed something extraordinary. If you think about the people that are consistently remembered and admired in the world, people like Mother Teresa, Mahatma Gandhi, Abraham Lincoln, sages and saints from all the faith traditions, what is the outstanding characteristic we see in all of them? They totally forgot about themselves and served others, took care of those in need, and tried to uplift everyone they met. And what I would like to offer is that if everyone on earth lived that way, this planet would be transformed, absolutely transformed. Even if we had that as a goal and messed up sometimes, still the planet would be transformed. Leo Tolstoy told a story about a man who wanted to know the difference between heaven and hell. So one night he had a dream, and in the dream he stood before 2 doors. Above one was the label hell, above the second, the label heaven. So he walked through the portal, indicating hell, and this is what he saw. A group of people were sitting in a circle, and in the center of this circle was a huge, sumptuous feast. And he looked and he saw that they were all holding a long-handled spoon that could easily reach the food. But they were all miserable and starving. And he couldn't understand why, so he looked a little more closely, and he noticed there was a wooden splint attached to everyone's arm so that they could not bend at the elbow. So they would take the food, and they couldn't get it into their mouths, so they were starving. He left that room, and he walked into the one labeled heaven. And it was the same scene to all appearances. A circle of people, a sumptuous feast, the long-handled spoon, the wooden splint, but these people were totally happy and satisfied. So he stood there and observed. Do you know what the difference was? What did they figure out? How to feed one another. Imagine a world where we all functioned in that way. Greed is problematic on all levels: societal, global, individual, and spiritual. If the people and nations of the world abided by this one precept, just one precept, life on planet Earth would be totally transformed. Mahatma Gandhi said, "The earth provides enough to fulfill everyone's need, but it can't possibly fulfill everyone's greed." When selfishness rules, individuals, nations, and the planet suffer. Instead of using the earth's resources and bounty in good measure for the benefit of one and all, they're exploited for the financial gain of a few. The lust for power and control pits nation against nation. People die from diseases for which we have cures. Many go to bed hungry every night when others just live in an atmosphere of luxury and excess. If we cared and shared, there would be enough food, clothing, shelter, medicine, everything, so we all could enjoy good quality of life. Selflessness nourishes, supports, and uplifts us all. Selfish desire, on the other hand, causes suffering. I think of greed as being like desire on steroids. It's excessive, it's obsessive, it makes us want things beyond what we need and beyond what is natural and proportionate for us. It's insatiable. It knows no bounds. The more we get, the more we want. Does it sound familiar? Trying to fulfill desire, end desire, by fulfilling it is like pouring oil on fire. It just burns even more. Anytime you fulfill a desire, it leaves an impression of that experience in the subconscious mind. And what those impressions do is they give rise to renewed cravings. So we find ourselves on a treadmill. And why is that sort of unpleasant or an occasion for suffering? Because trying to fulfill cravings always involves pain. There's effort, so much hard work to get what we want. If anything gets in our way, we're angry. After getting it comes the fear, maybe we'll lose it. And very often we get it and we're disappointed. It doesn't meet our expectations. And then in the middle somewhere, there's a little bit of pleasure. My favorite example of the folly of craving is just the example of getting a new car. We work so hard. We save our money. We finally have what we need. We go to the dealership. The appointed hour has arrived. Our car is presented to us. We are so happy. We get in it. We drive off the lot. what happens to the value of that car? It already tanks. Where is the lasting happiness? So seeing that again and again in ordinary experience, the question comes, why are we greedy? Why do we pursue more than we need? Why do we try to accumulate more than we could possibly use? And I think this can be answered both on a psychological level and on a deeper spiritual level. Why are we greedy? I think it can be summed up by two words, fear and desire. And the basic desire, we want to be loved, we want to be cherished, we want to be respected, we want to be valued. What is the basic fear? Fear for our safety, our security. We want to feel protected, supported. And the message that comes out to us through society in so many ways, through the media, through advertising, is that our value and our worth can be measured in terms of our acquisitions and our achievements. And not only that, but more is better all the time. You want to be loved? Get more. You want to feel safer? Have more. It's the message that explicitly and subliminally is being directed at us at all times. Do you agree? You know, I was thinking right before I came in, that when I was a young woman, cars were built to last. Good parts, they could last decades, a good car. Some of them are still around today. And then I can remember clearly when a new term became introduced into our culture, built-in obsolescence. Does anyone else remember that? There was a clear moment when that became part of our culture. In other words, companies chose not to create things to the highest standard, but to make them such that they would wear out more quickly, so we would have to buy more. More consumerism on our part, more profits for them. The motivation, greed. And as I thought of that, I thought about computers today, hardware and software. What do we see? After a certain number of years, your machine might still be functioning perfectly. It has many potential years ahead of us, but the companies stop supporting it. They stop supporting the hardware, they stop supporting the software, and you're forced to buy new products. That's what? Injections of greed into the culture. Everyone know the journalist Tom Brokaw? He was on TV for many years. I saw something he said. He said, we lost our way and allowed greed and excess to become the twin pillars in our culture. We became a society utterly absorbed in consumption and dismissive of moderation. So I ask us, does living this way really provide the assurance, the fulfillment, the security we are seeking? It doesn't. Life teaches us repeatedly that no one and no thing is with us always. Anything can be gone in an instant. If we try to insulate ourselves from this truth, we're only fooling ourselves and drawing the blinds of illusion more closely around us. So, why are we greedy? On a spiritual level, We are greedy because we are ignorant of our true nature, which is supremely peaceful and happy, and we seek happiness in external ways. And in doing that, we're seeking happiness in things that are always changing, so we can never be satisfied. So we always need more. The only thing, which isn't a thing, that will provide all that we're looking for is within us as our own true self. And the way to experience that, interestingly enough, is to stop all the looking, stop turning outward. Instead of doing, switch to being. Instead of accumulating, switch to emptying. And then we can experience the peace within. When we let go of desires, the miracle is everything we need is miraculously provided. Has anyone experienced that? The Bible says, seek ye first the kingdom of God, and all else will be added unto you. When we run after things, it's like we turn our back to the light and we chase shadows, and they perpetually evade us. Instead, if we turn and face and walk toward the light, the shadows that we were chasing begin to follow us. Narda mentioned the Lotus prayer book that I worked on many years back. It's interesting what happened. This was a project Gurudev wanted to be done. I was living here, but due to various circumstances, was sent to California, first to Santa Barbara. So I was pretty isolated, so I figured, well, what can I do? I can work on the prayer book that Gurudev wanted, but I didn't have a computer. Pretty much the day I formulated that intention, someone I barely knew showed up at the house where I was staying with a new box with an Apple computer. And he said, I just bought this computer. I heard that you might be interested in doing a project. Here, you use it. And I said, but you haven't even used it yet. He said, that's okay, I can wait. You're doing this for Gurudev, you're doing it for the benefit of everyone. You take the computer. I mean, it was great. What was remarkable was about a year later, I'm still working on the project, and I was transferred to the San Francisco IYI. I arrived there, and I announced the same thing to the universe. I'd really like to continue this project. There's a lot more to be done. They didn't even have Apple computers at the Institute. They were on another system. The very same day, someone, again, I barely knew, showed up and said, I heard you've been working on this project. A new box, unopened, the same computer, and said, here, you use it until the project is done. I can wait. That's what. And I'm sure if we went around the room, other people would have similar experiences. Gurudev used to say, he would quote the Hindu scriptures, that when we really let go of desires, all the greed that motivates us, the goddess Saraswati and the goddess Lakshmi sit at our feet, waiting to do our bidding. The goddess Saraswati is all knowledge. The goddess Lakshmi is all wealth, all wisdom, all money, whatever we need, because we're thinking of the benefit of others, is simply at our disposal. I once went on a VIP tour with Gurudev at Griffith's Observatory in Los Angeles. Some top, very well-renowned scientist, physicist was giving the tour. And I had the good fortune of being part of the group. So as we went around, the physicist was trying to impress Gurudev with his brilliance. And he started describing this cosmological event that took place in a huge span of time. And he started giving huge numbers that had to be multiplied to figure out how much time was involved. So the tour took about 40 minutes. And at the end, right before we were about to leave, Gurudev looked at the physicist and said, "This long number." And the scientist said, "What is that?" And Gurudev said, "Well, that's the answer to what you were talking about." And the scientist looked at him and said, "What do you mean that's the answer?" He said, "That's the answer." The scientist looked at him like he was a madman, but then he sat down and started computing all the numbers, and sure enough, to the digit, it was the right number. And we left with this man's face like that. And my own thought was, maybe this scientist needed a demonstration of the fact that there were other ways of knowing, that there was something beyond that could be attained. Anyway, it was an interesting experience. So, what are some practical steps we can take? I would suggest you begin. Ask yourselves and reflect on a few questions. Number one, are there any areas in my life where I am greedy? Who can raise their hands? Then think, how can I do better? Maybe just one way. How can I do better? Another question, do I tend to hoard things? Anyone? If you do, try to see, is there an underlying fear or desire that's making you hold on to things for which you have no use? Here's one I think probably most everyone can relate to. Do I ever eat more than I need? Anyone? Yeah, I'm afraid to go to the kitchen sometimes when Ram Dass makes his eggplant parmesan and pasta. It's a setup. So you can ask yourself, why do I do it? The Tirukkural, a holy scripture from South India, says, the body needs no medicine if you eat only once you have well digested what was eaten earlier. Food, when you live in community, like at the ashram, is a good area to focus on for spiritual practice, because like with greed and food, if you're at the beginning of the food line and there's something special there and there's a long line behind you, if everyone at the beginning takes more than they need, what's going to happen to the people at the end of the line? They're not going to get any at all. So, gives us pause to think. A really interesting exercise, and you can do this at home as well as here. Allow yourself one bowl of food per meal. And this isn't about denial, it's about mastery. The bowl can be that big. There's no limit. You decide what's your amount that's good for you. Take that amount. The only requirement is you eat everything you take. And watch what your mind does. It is so interesting. Even though you have all that you need, simply telling yourself you can't have more, mind will go crazy. And in a situation like this, I can share one experience I had here. I was doing this years ago. I had my bowl filled. I had left. I sat down. Someone came out of the kitchen and announced that someone who had just come from, I think it was Switzerland, brought this amazing dessert for the ashram, something you never will see again, will never be at the ashram again. This is a one-time only opportunity. And they say, so save room for dessert. So I'm sitting there, I'm going, I filled my bowl, but I haven't started eating yet, so maybe it doesn't count. I can push things over to the side. I start negotiating. You know, you make a vow, and then you try to negotiate with it. So anyway, tests do come. There's some sort of consciousness that sees, that takes note when we really try to do something. And even if it's something tiny, if it's to master your mind, it is formidable. Another question, do I have more possessions than I need or can reasonably use? Why do I keep them? The more things we have, the more things we have to clean and keep track of. But we do it. Another, do I feel jealous of those who seem to be more fortunate than I am, who seem to have more wealth, more things, a better job, more friends? And how does that affect my relationships? The Turu girl says, not coveting the cherished goods in someone else's hand is the reason why wealth doesn't shrink in our hands. Everyone follow that? If you're jealous, you wind up the loser. And a couple more questions. Does fulfilling my cravings satisfy me in an enduring and meaningful way? If you really look at it, it's just endless. You have the greatest piece of chocolate cake. What about tomorrow? What about next week? It's not enduring. It's not meaningful. And then the final question. Have I ever been aware of an unseen power, a higher power, caring for my needs better than I could have arranged for myself? Have you? Yeah. I'll just share one quick story about that. Years ago at our first ashram in California, in Ziegler Springs, our sewage system sort of exploded on us, and it was going to cost millions of dollars to fix it. So they looked at those of us who seemed maybe employable in the greater world and asked us to go out and try to get jobs so we could earn a little money. And I was one of a handful of people that they thought could possibly get a job. But the thing is, I didn't have proper clothes. You know, this was sort of a very rustic pioneer ashram. All we had was work clothes, old clothes, and they didn't have the money to provide me with a wardrobe. I was being sent out to bring money in, so I didn't know what to do. So we had a place called the boutique. The boutique is a place where if you have used something to the limit and don't need it anymore, you place it in, maybe someone else can eke out a little more usage from it. And usually what you found in that boutique were old work boots, torn jeans, old jackets, flannel shirts that had oil and cleaning supplies as part of their fabric now. That's usually what was there. So I said, I just announced to the universe, I'm doing this for the ashram. I need clothes. And given my size, I'm usually the end of the food chain when it comes to clothes anyway. I can't usually find anything. Everyone else is swapping things, but I swim in them. So I go there, not knowing what. I still have the image etched in my consciousness. I walk in, and usually this place was helter-skelter with things thrown all over. It was if my personal shopper had come, made purchases, and then laid them out on display for me. At that time, as a pre-sannyasi, we wore yellow and orange. The first item was a long cotton dress, yellow, with orange embroidery. There were wool pants. It was a cold winter. Wool sweaters, everything top quality. Then the amazing thing, it can take me months to find a pair of shoes that will work for both feet. I don't know if any of you have that sort of situation. There were new shoes there that fit perfectly. And I'll share too, not only that, perfectly new with the labels still attached were undergarments, just my size, just to underscore the absurdity that this could have happened in any sort of natural way. So I just, well, thank you. And I went to work. Letting go of desire, letting go of greed, even though it seems like denial and something that's going to take away the joy from life, we connect with something in the universe that's very precious, tender, aware, magnanimous, loving, and generous. There's a consciousness everywhere, and we tune into that, and we receive from that. So what I would recommend is for all of us to just try to let go. You don't have to let go of everything all at once and throw yourself into traumatic shock, but just little by little, baby steps. Instead of accumulating, think of emptying. And when I say emptying, decluttering our minds, our stuff, and our lives. We may say we want to do this, we may say we want peace, but for most people, it's a little scary to let go because we've come to define who we are in terms of what we have. Our body, our mind, and then by extension, all our stuff. And letting go is like letting go of pieces of ourselves. You can ask yourself, who am I without all this stuff? Who am I within the body, within the mind? So try one little thing that you can do. And I will share at the end a little experience that I'm currently having because I am finding it so simple and so extraordinarily useful that I just want to share it. I've had several mentoring sessions with some of the staff here at the ashram. And the other day, we decided to work on the Yama and Niyama principles, one a month. And we all discussed what we were going to do, what our individual practice was. We had different practices, what exactly we were going to work on, and what our practices were. And so I chose a specific quality that I wanted to work on. And one of the other people in the room also chose a quality, but he added something to it. He said whenever he took off his shoes or put on his shoes, he would think of that quality. And I thought, that sounds really neat. I'm going to try that too. Sounds easy, huh? I've been practicing almost half a century. I walked out of the room where we made that decision to the shoe rack, went to put my shoes on, and forgot. the sign of so many years of practice is I immediately remembered I forgot. At least I remembered that I forgot. But what has been happening, this has just been a few days, that I didn't anticipate, that relates to this talk, and that was so amazing, is that I'm watching this process unfold. But as I do it, I'm becoming more aware. What's coming into more clear focus is the background chatter in the mind, the scattered perceptions that just go on all the time, the disparate thoughts, the emotions that shoot through every now and then. Just sort of the background stuff that we don't even consider important enough to make note of, but just becoming aware of this deeper, finer level of clutter. Simply by focusing on a simple, repeated activity that happens throughout the day. And my point here is spiritual life, you don't have to try to jump over rivers. Try to step over the puddle that's right at your feet. Little things, practical things, simple physical things can utterly transform your consciousness. And that awareness will then percolate into all areas of your life and open a clear portal to the highest realization. Thank you.